this is Deja from CrochetEverAfter.com again, and today we are going to do a tutorial on color changing for Fair Isle patterns. Now before I get into the actual tutorial, I want to talk a little bit about Fair Isle crochet. Now, we know a lot about crochet intarsia, crochet tapestry crochet, and Fair Isle knitting, but actually Fair Isle crochet is kind of a new subject that there isn't a lot of information on. I actually had to go and develop a lot of these techniques and tutorials so that people could get a feeling of what it is and how easy it is to do. Once you actually start, it's kind of addictive. Now, Fair Isle crochet, just like tapestry crochet, will create pictures in your projects or patterns or motifs. The difference being from tapestry to Fair Isle is that Fair Isle runs the yarn that you're not using behind your project. Tapestry will actually run it through the stitches. The difference when you see your outcome is Fair Isle crochet is much more crisp color changes compared to the very muddled tapestry. And I'm going to show you a close-up of that before we start our tutorial. Now there's also intarsia crochet, where you're taking single balls of yarn for each picture that you're doing. So I might do one single owl on this whole beanie and use one ball of yellow. But in a complicated pattern like this with lots of different colors and different pictures, you would end up using a ball of yarn for every single little motif, which can get very complicated. But using Fair Isle, all you're simply doing is running the yarn on the inside. Much easier. So let me show you that close up and then we'll get into the tutorial. Okay, before we begin, I wanted to show you a motif swatch of Fair Isle versus tapestry. From behind you can easily tell which one is tapestry and which one is Fair Isle because you can see the floats of the Fair Isle. Tapestry does have a double-sided fabric, which is the one thing that I actually like about tapestry, but that's about it, because once you go to the front, then you can really see the muddling of tapestry versus Fair Isle. So the tapestry, of course, is on the bottom because you can see the yarn in between each of your stitches because you're running it through the center. With Fair Isle, you get very clean color changes. There's no muddling, and when you stretch, you're not getting the effect of all of this color in between your stitches. So if this is a beanie and you're putting it on your head, you get nice crisp color changes and none of this spotting that you see with tapestry. Also, one other thing with Fair Isle versus tapestry is if you're running a round of just a solid color like this round of black right here in between the two motifs, once you join back up in tapestry, your fabric's going to be different thicknesses because you're going to have an extra piece of yarn running through your stitch. With Fair Isle, no matter if it's a single color or a double color, because the yarn is running behind, you're not going to have separate thicknesses showing through the front. So that's another thing that I like about Fair Isle. So now we're going to go ahead and show you how to do these color changes and how to make your floats nice. Alright, now we are going to start doing a Fair Isle color change. When reading a Fair Isle pattern, you're going to see blocks of color that alert you to when you're going to need to switch from your MC or main color to your CC or contrasting color, depending on what the pattern calls for. We are going to pretend that our pattern is telling us that we need to switch over to our CC, our contrasting color, right after this next stitch. So what we're doing is inserting our hook into the next stitch and pulling up a loop, just like a regular single crochet, but instead of yarning over and pulling that through, we're just going to simply drop off our main color and we're going to join our contrasting color. Now to join, all you're going to do is take your yarn, you have your tail and the yarn that's attached to the ball, and slide it over your hook. And I like to hold on to it so I don't lose it as I pull it. And I'm just going to pull it right through the two stitches, the two loops that are on my hook, to complete my main color single crochet. Now I'm going to use my contrasting color to complete the next set of single crochets. I'm going to drop off my tail because I don't need that anymore. I'm going to weave that in when I'm done. And I'm going to do a pattern of 3 contrasting color, 3 main color, repeat around. So I'm just going to insert my hook and do 3 regular single crochets. But on the third one, once again, because I'm going to switch back to my main color, I'm going to stop at my last step before I do the last yarn over. But let's look at my stitches over here first. As you can see, this first stitch of my contrasting color is quite stretched out, and that's just because the tail is loose and it's not woven in. If I give it a little tug, it's going to pull it right back over into the correct spot. Now my last color of my main color, my last stitch of my main color, it's a little bit bigger than the rest, and that's just simply because I don't tug down on my yarn as I work, because once I join it back in over here at my next color change, it's going to give it a little tug and make it the same size as the rest of my stitches, which you'll see as I work. So now I'm going to pick up my main color. I'm just going to drop off my contrasting because I don't need it again until my next color change. Pick up my main color, yarn over, and pull that through to make a new color change. Now I'm going to work 3 single crochets in my main color. Here's 2. And on my third one I'm going to stop again so I can add back in my contrasting color. So I'm going to pull, make sure I get the right end. And I'm going to yarn over and bring that through and complete 3 more. And you notice I do not worry about how my stitches, my last stitch of each color change is, because as I pull you can see that they are all falling in line with each other and they are all looking the same size. So here we go, we're going to add in our main color again by just pulling. And I don't pull tight, I pull just enough to get the yarn straight along the back and around my hook. And the reason that I don't want to pull tight is because I want my project to still be able to stretch. So you can see that it is flat against my work, but there's enough stretch to be able to pull it. If I sat here and I yanked it as tight as I could and wrapped it around really tight, then I'm going to start getting puckering and I'm going to have a really poor looking project. So I only pull it just enough to reach my hook and yarn over. Very nice and gentle. Now, changing colors, you might have done it before and you might realize that sometimes you get very tangled yarn. Now there's a simple solution to keeping your yarn from getting tangled. And if you've noticed as I've worked how I'm doing my yarn over before my color change, I always like to keep my main color on top and my contrasting color on the bottom. And what that means is when I come to yarn over, I always bring my contrasting color from below my main color and wrap it over. So you see it came under the main color, and then when I change back to my main color, I always bring it above and over my contrasting color. So that way they don't get looped over each other as I work and I don't have to untangle balls of yarn as I work. So you see again that I'm going to grab my yarn from underneath my main color and wrap it around. And I drop my main color because I don't need to hold on to it. And then I do my 3 single crochets. And then I grab my main color and I bring it over the top. So by doing the top and under with the colors, you're not going to have the tangles that you would. So now you can see the nice color changes from the front and the floats on the back, and you can also see how my floats are nice and untangled. You can see the contrasting color is below the main color. Well, if you were looking at it the right way, it looks opposite right now, but as you look at it, here's my main color on top, contrasting color on the bottom. Very nice floats, lots of stretch. So you just keep on doing that as the pattern calls for it, and once you're told to change, you change to the new color, and then once it tells you to fasten it off, all you have to do is just basically take your yarn, cut it off, and leave it, and weave it in when you're done. You don't have to do anything special with it. It'll just work its way as you work around. It's going to lock itself in, so you don't have to worry about it coming undone. And that is Fair Isle color change.